Mikhail was not a faithful husband. It wasn't that he chased every skirt, but he was definitely an easily fascinated person. Family life curbed him briefly, but a few months after the wedding, Mikhail was back on the hunt. "I'm a man, a male," he proudly boasted to his friends over a bottle of beer. "I can afford it, as they say. And besides, I always come back to my wife, like a dog that's had its fill." His friends nodded in understanding. If he always returned to his wife, then, of course, it wasn't really cheating. Lilia loved her husband and suspected nothing. She sincerely believed Mikhail, who stayed late at work and often spent weekends away from the family. After marriage, she fully immersed herself in family care and raising children, and she never stopped rejoicing that her husband took care of the family's financial well-being. "Mikhail gets very tired at work, he needs to rest, and the kids are noisy," she explained to her parents while going to visit them during her vacation. "It's just a week of vacation, let him sleep." But Mikhail didn't waste time on such days. He spent his nights in clubs, continuing to prove to himself that he was still desirable. Truth be told, Mikhail wasn't in the best shape. His large beer belly hung lower than his manhood, his back was hunched, and his arms were thin, if not outright skinny. This ensemble couldn't be called male beauty, by any means. But he impressed greedy strangers with something else. An expensive phone, a nice car, and the right cologne. This combination left single girls, with whom Mikhail had affairs, indifferent. And if earlier he didn't allow himself to bring new acquaintances home, this time everything went off the rails. Lilia once again left to visit her parents, taking the children with her. In his excitement, Mikhail drank a bit too much and came to his senses only in the morning, in his apartment, cuddling a charming blue-eyed stranger in the marital bed. The girl's name was Victoria, and she was only 22. Compared to 35-year-old Lilia, who had lost her girlish figure after childbirth, Victoria was like a delicate flower. It didn't even occur to Mikhail that he was doing something wrong by bringing his lover home. He had completely lost his mind. The couple didn't leave the bedroom for a whole week, and only by Sunday evening did Mikhail remember his family. And not Lilia, but the children. "Do you love her?" Victoria asked languidly, rolling her eyes. "Of course not," Mikhail answered confidently, as if 10 years of marriage with Lilia meant nothing. "We're only together for the kids. Boys need their father. We live like neighbors." "You don't even sleep together?" Victoria clarified, eyeing the 4-room apartment and trying on the role of mistress. "No, of course not. I would have divorced a long time ago. But Lilia is very sick. The prognosis is not good. Where can I put her, sick as she is? Throw her out on the street?" Mikhail lied blatantly. "Especially since she doesn't even work and lives off me," Victoria pondered. "An unloved, sick wife, living off her husband, that's just what you need if you want to establish yourself in the capital." "I actually thought you would marry me after what we've had," the girl blinked her eyes. "You will divorce her, won't you?" "Absolutely," Mikhail promised. "Although, I think it won't come to that since my wife is very sick." Before Lilia returned, he quickly rented an apartment for his lover in the neighboring building. Now there was no need to look for places to meet other women, as Victoria was always nearby. Of course, he had no intention of divorcing, as finding a wife as efficient and wise as Lilia would be difficult. Yes, there had been no passion in their family for a long time, but was that the most important thing for a family unit? At least he always had pressed shirts, a hot dinner, and a well-organized household. Victoria, who had never experienced family life, simply couldn't provide that, so Mikhail decided to keep her as a permanent mistress. Lilia noticed nothing or pretended not to. Mikhail breathed a sigh of relief when, after her return, his wife, as usual, took care of dinner and then her knitting. Lilia was passionate about knitting. He promised himself that he would never again be so reckless as to bring women home. But Victoria turned out to be not as simple as she seemed at first glance. The girl had been hunting for metropolitan bachelors for the second year, and this was the first time she had such luck. A large apartment, what happiness! If everything happened as planned, and the legal wife passed away, and the children could be sent to their grandmothers, then Victoria would indeed become the mistress here. And Victoria developed her plan of action. First, she tried to figure out what kind of person Lilia was. Victoria was taken aback when she saw, instead of a feeble sick woman, a quite young and well-groomed lady in a bright red SUV. At that moment, Victoria even doubted whether Mikhail had been deceiving her, telling tales about his wife's illness. "Oh, my dear," Mikhail reassured Victoria. "I just pay huge amounts for treatment. The best doctors are taking care of Lilia's health. I can't just let her health deteriorate. We have children." "How noble you are," Victoria admired, mentally putting herself behind the wheel of Lilia's car. "And generous. Such a car for your wife. It's just a gift." After all, a car is not a luxury but a means of transportation. Mikhail embraced his beloved. A month passed, then another 6 months. Victoria exhausted herself in the gym and followed diets to look her best. Mikhail visited her after work. And Victoria put in her best efforts at every meeting. She wanted him not to even think about replacing her with another lover. But Mikhail had no intention of changing anything. He was quite satisfied with everything. He even stopped discussing their future together with Victoria. Frustrated, Victoria decided to take matters into her own hands. First, she needed to get pregnant. There were no problems with that, and within a couple of months, Victoria delighted her beloved with the news of a future heir. "What? How come?" Mikhail nervously asked. Children were not part of his plans at all. Typically, Victoria shrugged. "Children come from love. You know that, right?" she said. "Yes." Michael gulped. "But I already have 2 kids, and I don't need any more." "But I don't have any," the girl smiled. "Now you'll finally divorce your wife, and we can build our own family. Especially since we're expecting a baby. I've thought of everything. We can send your wife and kids to her parents. She goes there often enough anyway. Fresh air and a river in the village, you said it yourself. Meanwhile, we'll renovate your apartment and set up a nursery. Eventually, your boys can stay with their grandmother permanently after your wife leaves. Do you want me to talk to your Lilia and explain that you don't love her?" The thought of Victoria talking to Lilia almost made Michael's legs give way. "What do you mean, talk?" "I'll talk to her myself," Michael muttered. "Don't do anything rash." "You're so indecisive," Victoria smiled. "I never thought you were like this. Promise me you won't call Lilia." "Isn't it too late to go to the hospital?" Michael asked. Victoria shook her head and frowned. Did this coward really think she got pregnant just to miss out on the chance to marry a city dweller? She promised not to call his wife, but had other plans. She simply waited for Lilia to return from the store and approached her on the street. "You're Lilia, right?" "I'm Victoria," she began arrogantly and decisively, without even bothering to greet her. "I want to tell you that Michael doesn't love you and is only with you for the children. We have love, and soon a baby." Lilia looked at her rival in surprise. "A baby? Who are you anyway?" "Yes, a baby," Victoria responded defiantly, pushing out her slim stomach. "So let Michael go and give him a divorce. Especially since you're sick and don't have long. Stop tormenting him and blackmailing him with the kids. He's too kind-hearted, supporting you at the expense of our relationship. He even gives you money for treatment. Be grateful for that. Lilia was too stunned to speak and just sat down on a bench. And what exactly am I sick with? She managed to ask. Victoria hesitated, as Michael hadn't shared his wife's precise diagnoses. I'll let Michael go. Don't worry, Lilia said, regaining some composure. Indeed, how could I not let such an honorable man go? Feeling pleased with herself for solving the wife problem so easily, Victoria hurried home to pack. She and her future baby would soon be moving into a new apartment. But less than an hour later, the door burst open, and her irresponsible lover stood in the doorway. What have you done? I told you not to say anything to Lilia. His face was contorted with rage, and his hands were shaking. It was clear he already knew Victoria had spoken with Lilia. What did I do? Victoria replied as calmly as possible. I talked to your wife. She agreed to divorce you. Where will she live with the kids, in the village? Michael screamed. Fool. The apartment belongs to my mother-in-law, I'm not even registered there. And thanks to you, I got fired today. The director is Lilia's father, he doesn't want to know me now. Do you think I'll get a good job now? Fool. Victoria sat on the bed. Only now did she begin to realize the scale of what she had done. So we're not moving? I wouldn't have gotten pregnant if I knew you were a pauper. We're moving. Michael snapped and sat down, covering his face with his hands. Yes, we're moving. To the streets. I was thrown out with nothing. Everything belongs to Lilia. They didn't even let me pack a suitcase. Michael suddenly realized that everything he had achieved in life was thanks to Lilia and her parents. He hadn't appreciated it and had treated his wife like furniture and financial stability as a given. Now he had to prove to Victoria and, most importantly, to himself that he could achieve something on his own. This was going to be a very challenging endeavor.